On our last 4-minute focus, we talked about the kingdom and its coming. I'm not what you expected, am I? Not what you thought you would see? Sometimes we have that same kind of feeling when we're reading through God's Word. Maybe it's when the scriptures are different than the traditions we have, or different than what we want them to be, or maybe just different from how we've always done things. The apostles also had a moment like that, and my dad's going to tell you a little more about it.
As Hannah just indicated, that the last couple lessons we looked at dealt with the Messiah coming, the kingdom coming. But it was going to be different. It wasn't necessarily what they were thinking, and it wasn't what they expected from the past. The next 3 chapters, they deal with this, and they mesh it all together as Jesus takes the apostles forward. Right off the bat, chapter 18, verse 1, it says, "At that time the disciples came to Jesus and asked, 'Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?'" Who is the greatest? Who is going to be the king? Who is going to be the best? Well, Jesus responds in verses 2 through 6. And his response is, about kids, but they go, hold it, kids, they weren't necessarily bad, but, they weren't necessarily high priority. Verse 10, though, Jesus says, "See that you do not look down on one of these little ones. For I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven." The importance of the children, of being like a child. Well, in chapter 19, verse 14 says, Jesus said, the kids were kind of coming to him, and the disciples were kind of pushing him back. "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." No, Jesus. You got it wrong. The kingdom is about power. It's about King David in reestablishing his reign, and Solomon and how he expanded the kingdom. That is what it's about. No, Jesus said, it's about like being a child. The trust, the belief that we see in children. Then Jesus goes on, and the rich man, sell everything and come follow. Give up everything. Well, that's kind of weird, because riches show that you are part of God's kingdom. You were doing good was what their thinking was. The wages of the people that worked all day got the same as those that worked just the last hour. No, Jesus, that's just crazy talk. And then there's the request of James and John to set at your right and your left hand. How do you think? It was weird, and this had to perplex the disciples. Well, yeah, look over at chapter 20. I want to read a couple of verses there, starting in verse 17. "Now, as Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside and said to them, 'We are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and the teachers of law. They will condemn him to death and will turn him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified. On the 3rd day, he will rise from the dead.'" Okay, well, first of all, I don't know if Peter was still licking his wounds from earlier or if he had learned something, but Peter didn't try to correct Jesus here. But it was weird. They had to be perplexed, thinking, what is going on? See, Jesus is calling them to think differently. Not to be childish, where you want things your own way. I've got to have it this way. This is what I want. But childlike in our trust, in our dependence on God. This next week, notice kids. Notice when they're childlike, and notice when they're childish. And think about being the childlike follower that God desires. Go be a child this week. Stay safe.